in today's session. To know more about Charity Transparency Framework, to take us through the details is Mr. Rajan Krishnan, Member, Charity Council. So please make note of any questions that you may wish to ask, and do not ask them during the, ask them during the panel session after the sharing. Mr. Rajan, please.
Thank you, Raja, for the introduction, and a very good morning to all of you. The topic of the morning is the Charity Transparency Framework. The aim of this presentation and talk is to introduce the CTF for all those who are not familiar with it, to highlight the key objectives and purpose of the framework, and the use of the Charity Disclosure Scorecard as a self-measure on how transparent are you in disclosure, and to recognize the areas that need improvement. So it is a self-check process. Charities are community organizations and depend on the public and donors. It is important for all stakeholders, including donors and beneficiaries, to have a good understanding of not only the work of the charity is doing, but also how well it is being managed and governed. It is important for charities to earn the goodwill and trust of the stakeholders. Thus, charities have to provide clear and transparent information to the public on their policies, governance, management of financial controls. This will help the public and donors to make considered choices in the charities they want to support. In the context of temples, similarly, those who donate cash, jewelry, and their services must, and it's important the temples and the management committee earn the trust of these stakeholders. The CTF provides charities the type of information that should be made available, and also provides a checklist so that the charities can make a self-assessment as to how well they're doing it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have a method of measuring yourself. Now, of course, this should be taken in conjunction with the Code of Governance, which is the parent body. So I'll go to the slides now. Yeah, next. Now, as the Commissioner stated, this CTF, or the Charity Transparency Framework, was launched in 2015, basically to improve the transparency and accountability of the charity sector. And in 2016, the Charity Transparency Award was held to recognize charities who had good practices. In 2019, a further review was carried out, and then it was released this year. And to make it more rational and simpler to use, in my opinion, and graduated to the scale and size of charities. Next. Next slide, Raja. Yeah. Now, what are the objectives? As I said earlier, it's a self-diagnostic tool to charities to establish good disclosing standards. So at least you know what to disclose and how to disclose it. And it's also a tool as a public education. So the public will get better knowledge of yourselves, and this will aid in the safe giving. In the end, it boosts public confidence in yourselves, in your charities, and you are setting standards for transparency for charities to follow. Like all temples, all charities, all organizations have to take responsibility for what information we put it out there. And that also helps to bring about better internal discipline and control as you are aware of yourselves. Next. Now, let's come down to what to disclose and where to disclose and how detailed should the disclosure be. Let's look at the diagram on the right side. There are 9 key areas of disclosure. Let's start with on the left part of the circle at the 9 o'clock position. Firstly, you have the timeliness of submissions. You must submit on time. Secondly, matters related to board governance and executive management. Next, conflict of interest. What is your strategic plan, your management of your programs, and management of your human resources and management of your volunteers. Information on the financial management and internal controls that you have in place. Details of your fundraising activities. And number 9, finally, quite important, what is the auditor's report say at the end of the year. Now, where do you post this information? The public can access this information from your annual report, from your financial statements. They will also go to your official website or your own charity's Facebook or your own social media platforms. So when they are there, they're accessible to the public, and it's easy for them to access all the details you put out there. Now, let's look at how detailed should this information be. Just a word here, in this talk, when I use the board or the governing board, in most of your cases, it means your temple committee, your temple management committee. That's what it means. But the board is used in a very generic manner because we have charities of all sorts of size and manner in Singapore. So the board is the word board is used as the highest management control authority of the organization. Okay, next slide.
Hold on. Sorry.
Yeah, next one, Raja.
Yeah, it's not moving yet, so I don't know.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, having defined the 9 areas of disclosure, let's have a look at this disclosure scorecard. This disclosure scorecard brings you to stages where it soon explains what are the information that you have to put out to the public. Now, how to use this scorecard? How to use this scorecard? Firstly, look at the size of your annual receipts and expenditure. If your annual receipts and expenditures are between 50,000 to 500,000, you are classified as a small category or basic. In the next row, you have the intermediate category, where your annual gross receipts and expenditure are between 500,000 and 10 million. And I suspect many of you are in this category with the annual turnover of about 500,000 and less than 10 million. And if you're in the category where your annual receipts and total expenditure exceed 10 million, then you're in the advanced or enhanced category. The level of disclosure becomes more stringent as you grow in size, as expected. So as temples, I think none of you are in the institution of public character or IPC category. Okay, let's look at the use of the disclosure scorecard. Next slide. All right, on the left-hand side, it gives you the step 1, 2, and 3. Firstly, identify the tier that your charity belongs to, whether you are in the basic, intermediate, or the enhanced grade. Let's take, for example, the basic or small category, the column colored blue color. On each row, you see the 9 areas. Firstly, A, timeliness, as I explained earlier, board governance, and so on. For example, under timeliness, if you're in the basic grade, you have one area of disclosure, and that is you disclose on time. Even if you're in the intermediate grade, you have one item, which is to ensure that your submissions are done on time. However, if you go to the board governance and executive management category, if you're in the basic sector, there are 5 areas you must disclose, or 5 series sets of information you must disclose. But if you're in the intermediate category, that goes up to 13 areas of disclosure. So it becomes much more stringent as your charity is of, depending on the size of your charity. So if you're in the basic category, if you go down the score, the areas of disclosure, you can see it's 1 for the timeliness, 5 areas for board of governance, 3 areas for conflict of interest, and so on. And at the bottom, you'll see a number 23. So there are 23 areas of disclosure if you are in the basic category. You can use, later we'll go very briefly to what are these points you cover, and you can do a self-check. And if you manage, for example, under B, Board of Governance and Executive Management, you have satisfied 3 out of the 5, then you score 3 points. And in the strategic planning, if you only covered 1 area in disclosure, you only score 1 out of 3 points. And you do that, and you assess, and in the end, let's say you score 18 points out of 23, 18 divided by 23, you'll end up about 78%. Now, the important thing is not whether it's 78% or 80% or 60%. The fact is that you then realize you got about 22% to improve. There are 22% of areas where you need to improve in your disclosure. And that should set your mind thinking, how do I go about improving in these areas of disclosure where I'm not really as transparent as I should be. Okay, let's go to the next slide, where we'll cover each of the 9 disclosure areas. A, on timeliness of disclosure, is quite simple. The disclosure item, as on the right, it says on-time submission within 6 months at the end of the financial year, or if there's an extension given by the Commissioner of Charities within that time. It's either yes or no. Either you make it on time, you get 1 point. If you don't make it on time, you don't score anything on that point. Next one. Again, in this example, I make it very clear I'm using the basic tier as an example. If you are in the intermediate tier, you've got a few more points to cover. In the basic tier for board governance and executive management, you need to disclose the name of your management committee, what appointments are they holding, when are they holding, and to which period, and how often you have board meetings, and how are the attendance of your management committee members. And if you have executive staff who are paid to run like temple managers and other staff, you need to show the organization structure. Once this is clearly out there, all these 5 bullets, you can see there are 5 bullets here. If all the 5 bullets are covered, you score 5 points. For example, if you do not show your organization structure, you only show your committee members, then you score 4 points out of 5. And if you are in the intermediate category, it's not only 5 points you have to cover 13 points. So you've got much more to disclose to the public if you happen to be in the intermediate grade. And these are quite basic as you look at them, but it takes time and effort to put it out there in the public. Next slide. You move on to the conflict of interest areas. Now, conflict of interest is a very, very important area because you are dealing with public money and donations very often, and it must be put to good use and with proper decisions on its use. This is to ensure that those on the board or the management committee keep away from decisions where they may lead to a position to financially or otherwise directly or personally benefit from it. So public must perceive that the money is being put to best use that the money is donated for, and not for the personal benefit or gain of any of the board or management committee members. So you need to cover 3 areas. Firstly, you must put up the exact remuneration and benefits each of the committee members receive, if it does, or you can say that, look, our constitution does not permit any of the management committee to receive any money, or you can very clearly say that board members do not receive any remuneration. Just declare that. Number two, you have to make sure that if any of the management committees receive any remuneration, you should very, very clear that the board members themselves are not involved in setting their own remuneration. And if you do not have any pay or benefit, you just declare that nobody receives any money. And similarly for staff, the paid staff should not be involved in setting their own pay or benefits. It should be somebody higher authority, and that you should say very clearly. However, if your staff are all volunteers and do not receive any benefit or salary, just declare it. So if you are transparent on these three areas, you score 3 points. And this is the still the, however, if you are in the intermediate or the bigger grade charity, you have one additional disclosure point, which is the documented processes to show that the board members and the management committee members must actually declare that there's no, if there's any potential conflicts, and if there are any interested party transactions, they should declare themselves to be out of it. So there is another statement out there, and therefore, if you're in the intermediate grade, you score 4 points. There are 4 points to cover. Here, there are only 3 bullets and 3 points. So you put this out, you score full points for this. Next one. On strategic planning, you have to be very clear what is your vision and mission. In the case of temples and such charities, the vision and mission are quite clear because you know what you are there for all these years. What are your objectives? And here you need to outline your plan and your strategy to achieve its mission in the next 2 years. Some of you are involved not only in directly providing temple-related services, but also other social services. And you can put it out there very clearly and how you plan to achieve it. So this becomes very clear to the donor that, hey, look, this group of people are doing something great, and that's where my money is going to, and they feel confident in donating or supporting yourselves. You cover all these 3 out there, you score 3 points. Okay, next one. In program management, most temples run several programs, not only your standard religious programs, which are many, I know. There are also fundraising programs. There are also other social programs you run, like health screening, art classes, yoga classes, some with fees, some without fees. So there are 2 points to cover. Disclose the list of programs and activities and services you provide. What time is it? How many times a week? What's the purpose of these activities? And it's always good to explain or put out there what's the outcome of these programs. That last 6 months we had these programs, and this is what happened. This is how people benefited. How many children took part in yoga classes? How many came from religious classes? What are the benefits and how were they funded? And this highlights the activities and the outcome of your activities clearly to the public. So it becomes transparent and informative. You cover these 2 points well, and there are 2 points for here, under this category. Next, human resource management. Here, the transparency is basically on remuneration or pay. If you don't have any management committee or staff who's on a salary, you don't have to declare. You just declare we do not have staff or they have no remuneration. Or in this case, you only need to disclose the 3 highest paid staff who receive pay of more than or benefits more than 100,000 per year. If you have none of them who have got any income above 100,000, you just say that you don't have any staff who have income of that nature. And if you don't have any staff, you just say you don't have any staff, full stop. So you're quite clear what you have to highlight here. Next one. Financial management, of course, has got, and its controls are the most important, I would think, when you accept and receive and disburse your donations, whether they are cash or gold. There are 4 key points here. You need to document, the documented procedures are in place for my financial matters in key areas, that how you procure your items required for your temple, whether there are proper receipts and payment procedures, and there's a daily control, especially cash, charity box, and donation of jewelry and gold. These are very liquid items, and if there's no daily proper control, I know all of you have got excellent control in handling cash and jewelry donations, and also from donations that goes into the donation box. There has been occasional lapses, and that creates doubts in the ears and eyes of the public. We should continue to be vigilant on it, and your procedure should be made clear to the public what control mechanisms you have. Secondly, if you have got reserves and you've got policy of keeping reserves, you should disclose the reserves, what are they kept for, and for future operation or future dip in income, and state very clearly what is your policy and what is your reserve position. Thirdly, the purpose and amount of restricted or endowment funds. Many of you keep funds aside for either for bursary awards in future or for other health benefits. Some of you keep aside money, specific money, restricted funds for extension of lease in the future. You need to show how much you're keeping aside, for what purpose, and when it's likely you're going to use it, and the planned timing for use. So you cover these 4 bullets, and if they're clear and useful and transparent to the public, you cover 4 of the full points, and you can give yourself 4 points completely. However, for example, if you do not have a reserve policy and that is not stated anywhere, then you only score 3 out of 4 points. Next, fundraising practices. Here, the disclosure and nature and purpose of funds received, that is what you have received in donation in cash, what you have got in kind, solicited and unsolicited. I'm sure that you know the difference in meaning. A lot of those charity boxes and all that are unsolicited. Sometimes some people just come and give you a cash and money, and those are unsolicited. Others are your home undial or your specific donation pamphlets you put up for a specific purpose, like your Kumbhabhishekam or your major renovation you're undertaking. Funds for sponsorship, for grants, this should be disclosed. And if you have fundraising events, details like when it was conducted, how much funds was raised, how much funds was used for it, and so on, as explained here. And finally, your fundraising efficiency ratio. How much of the money how much money have you spent in raising the money that you received? So if you're spending $10 to receive $20, then you have your cost of raising $20 is $10, and that efficiency ratio, you can work it out yourself. So you need to ensure that a lot of money is spent on the final beneficiary. The donors want to feel their money reaches the end user and not spent on just a large portion of it goes for administrative purposes alone. Next, there are 3 bullets under this category. And finally, the last one is your auditor's report. This is, I think everybody who looks at an auditor's report looks at the statement of, is there any qualification or opinion? If there are expressed opinions which don't stand up to scrutiny, then it doesn't augur well. Or if the auditor includes an emphasis of matter, it just sometimes the auditor emphasizes certain issues, but it does not have any adverse impact on the financial statements. If that is clear, then you score 1 point, which is required here. So this way, this disclosure scorecard explains in detail what are the areas of disclosure and to what extent of depth have you got to go into in disclosing them. So you total up your score and you know exactly where you are and how to improve them. Next slide, please. I'm coming to the end of it soon. Now, how to get there? When having scored it and found your inadequacies and shortcomings, you need resources and people who are going to commit to get this corrected or to improve rather. You need to have a proper structure, organizational structure, the makeup of the charity that supports the implementation of good transparency practices. It doesn't happen just by itself. You need to have developed processes, a series of steps and actions required, most of it documented so that everybody knows how to follow them. And finally, the most challenging to all of us anywhere is getting people who are committed, trained, and know exactly the skill set, how to go about in the governance and the how to put out information correctly and precisely to the public. Next slide. So it all comes to people, whether you're the management committee, whether you have a chief executive officer, or you have a clerk, or you have a manager, it doesn't matter. Somebody who operates for you and your staff and the volunteers. There are many good, well-meaning volunteers. All temples have excellent volunteers who mean well, but you need to bring them under an umbrella of discipline, of controls, so that while their intentions and their heart are in the right place, you still need proper processes. So the perception from outside is that the money that is being used is put to excellent use, and therefore that understanding got to reach all the way down to the ground of your organization. Thank you. And I think the last slide is that it's information that if you need much more information, well, this talk is useful, and this webinar is also useful in that respect, but there are many other channels you can go into to get much more details. Thank you very much, and I hope this has been useful to you.
Thank you, Mr. Rajan. You can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you. I hope I kept my time, though.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much for the comprehensive coverage of the CTF and the 9 dimensions and going through it. It is something that I think the temples, charities should study and discuss it in your management committee to see how we can go about implementing it as required. Of course, the key question that will come to your mind is some of which might require funding. So where do we go for that? I think that was kind of touched upon by both Commissioner of Charities and Mr. Rajan. So let me very quickly go through the VCF funding options that the temples can tap into. These slides were provided by NCSS. I'd like to thank them for that. Just a minute. Okay. VCF actually stands, it's an abbreviation for Volunteer Welfare Organizations Charities Capability Fund for charities and IPCs. And I think we are familiar with this in the sense that we have circulated this a few times. We have discussed this a few times, but some of the temples think that the application process may be arduous and all that. It isn't. So first and foremost, let us just cover the areas that the VCF funding supports. The simplest of that is what is on the top, which is a local training. I know the management committee members might think that we don't require training, but that is not the truth. If you want to implement the CTF to the fullest, some of the management committee members need to attend some of these trainings, and these trainings are funded by VCS up to 80%, capped at $1,000. And most of these courses do not cost that much. Later on, under the Go Digital, you will find a lot of training opportunities mentioned. The next is the Consultancy Grant. Now, you have an opportunity to engage anyone who can think on behalf of the temple committee on various areas. And that's quite amply funded, up to 80%, kept at $100,000 for small and medium charities over 5 years. Therefore, something that we should look into, instead of using your own resources, please apply. Now, since COVID set upon us, there were some changes made to the VCF funding. One of which is a collaborative project. Okay, this is very powerful because a solution may be required for more than 2 charities. As long as 2 charities come together and they want to apply for the funding under this collaborative project, then you can do so, right? It is $50,000 per project, capped at $50,000 or 80% of the cost, whichever is lower. And this is something that I'm also exploring for the Hindu temples in terms of some of the IT solutions. I think most of the solutions required are quite similar, or if not the same. Therefore, this is something we can look into. ICT grant. I think COC touched on this, that one temple did apply for this. Under the ICT grant, there are various options that you have, right? Even from the simplest of getting your, I think it is, hold on a second, yes. So your laptops, broadbands, and so on and so forth. So once again, since April, since we're using a lot of this video and audio conferencing, and small charities can apply for those, like a Zoom account, cost, cameras, video conferencing tools. And then from 3rd September, under the digitalization effort, you have all of that is mentioned, right? Accounts management, bills and bills, all of this pertains to us. CRM, if you want to keep track of a database of customers, stakeholders, donors, volunteers, and so on. There is already a separate volunteer management system and their donor management system. Or you can have a CRM that looks into all of that together. Cybersecurity. As you put more and more databases onto cloud storage or within your own networks, we need to ensure that the cybersecurity is strong so that there's no leakages or cyber attacks. HRM, human resource management. Yes, we are dealing with a small group of priests and a couple of admin staff, but it's possible to even implement for a very small charity. And iShine Cloud services under COC's MOU structure gives an excellent solution for many charities. There is also visitor management. See, as you know that nowadays we are grappling with how to count the number of visitors who are coming into the temple. For festivals, there is thermal scanning, there is, those things, right? Handphone being used to scan IDs. This thing can be managed under the visitor management, right? I'm also thinking whether we can put in some of the service bookings under visitor management, because that's what the visitors do. So we are exploring those options. So shared services grants support charities, and then we can park some of these projects under this. Okay. So the question then arises, which of this funding do we kind of apply to? Okay, this is where you can come to HEB, and HEB will consult NCSS, VCS Secretariat, and find out which is the best grant to go under. In fact, the application procedure itself states a consultation process. First and foremost, you should be able to go to the ncss.gov.sg site, understand what are the funding available. Now, point 2, what VCF Secretariat says is engage us for a preliminary discussion. So you don't have to, be lost in this. You can just call them and then find out this is what I'm trying to do. How do I go about doing it? And they will guide you. right? So the forms are all there, they will guide you. And thirdly, submit the application via your COPA. That's all. From there onwards, they will evaluate and they will let you know what documentation is required. You provide the documentation in terms of quotations or tenders and so on and so forth. And then thereon, you just need to engage the selected vendor, implement the solution, and then show that you have implemented it. So this is as straightforward as you can get. I can't go into all the details of the funding options and how much funding we can get, but let's discuss this offline after the session. And we were actually thinking of having a separate session on this, possibly next year, face to face, or if not, via Zoom. Okay, so you can download the BCF brochure. I've already sent it to you via SG Temple's WhatsApp group and via email. You can still download this, and you can always come and ask us for a copy of this. So with that, I conclude my portion of the session. Now we're going to go into the more important panel session. Okay, so